Okay, so how's everybody doing? So this is probably a good time to introduce the new airbrush that I picked up. Thanks to all my subscribers and those that have donated to the channel. This is the Pache Talon USA, and I've always liked Pache. Like I have still Badgers and Pache from my early days. And I used to like my Pache because it always worked. Like it was my backup airbrush, but most of you know I really love the Omni 5000, but I couldn't get my hands on one, and the one that I saw that was available, it was cost prohibitive because of the shipping. The shipping was just too much. It was ridiculous. Like by the time I do exchange here in Canada, it's like throwing away $100. Like it just wasn't worth it to me. So, and I don't like to buy expensive airbrushes. I've never used them before. You can't tell with my models. So and I do like to support, you know, American-made products because they've been good to me over the years. So this is the dual action Pache. It's got a rather large fixed cup. I almost wished it was a bit smaller if I could criticize it. I'm happy with the performance with it. I've tested it. I do like the larger cup though, because I like this for painting terrain. I use thin pigment, like 80%, 85 even, or 90 sometimes IPA, and only 5 to 10% pigment. You know, so I tend to go through a fair bit, but it's mostly isopropyl alcohol, which is good because when you're using dirt or any kind of broken up leaves or anything like that, there's going to be bacteria from outside products if you use natural terrain elements. And the IPA will kill any bacteria or microbes or anything that are in it. So that's another plus for IPA-based paints. And furthermore, I like to use acrylics because I can lay on lots of different layers all in one session. Like I don't lose momentum having to wait for things to dry. And like I know people like to use oils and like acrylics, and those are fine scenery paints as well, except I just don't like to wait for them to dry. So it can be hard to get into the momentum, but once you get into it, things start to flow, which is why it's hard to photograph a process like that, because I have like 8 to 10 colors, like all lined up usually. And I just start going, right? Like I get in, and it doesn't make any sense. Like even if I filmed it, like there's no way I could describe the methodology. You just have to start doing it and just getting hands-on practice and then seeing what works and what doesn't. And when you use thin paint, you're not going to be laying on too much opaque where you go, oh geez, I got to cover that up, because you're just gradually building up layers of paint, and you're able to look at it and analyze it and say, no, I don't like that. I want to go darker first and then lighter. I want to add some lighter color here or there, or cut in individual ties. So it's a zone thing that you get into. You should set a couple of hours, put your phone away, and just find 2 hours alone, and then just do a small area, right? Okay, like the postage stamp scene is just a philosophy where you work in a small area to learn things and get a feel for your colors and your movement, and then you can expand out from there on the larger layout. That's why I teach it that way or paint that way, because it allows me to discover any issues early on that I don't want to carry out into the larger footprint, okay? So this is very thin here, but it's probably not even thin enough because I don't like the way it jumps out at me just yet. So, but it is earth, and so I'm going to knock down a lot of this green grass, because a lot of this gets knocked down and killed off through Roundup. Railroads don't like their tracks being overgrown. So I like to knock down the synthetic look of natural scenery, or whatever scenery that you choose to use. I'll point some things out later, like you can see a lot of this darker green, like this is Woodland Scenics turf. I'll tone that down a bit, and as well as all this grass. So you can see how I'm on the area longer than usual, but it's not, you know, changing the color too rapidly. That's because it's very thin, right? Once again, and I can change up at any point and not have to lose that layer or that effect. I can build upon it. And another thing I want to add too is that oftentimes, like you get when you're painting for a while, is the pigment will tend to settle a bit on the bottom of the cup, but that's okay because that'll work in your favor, because just get used to that, because you can use that area, like you can just shake your airbrush, especially when you have a lid on it, and you can get the pigment going again. And sometimes you might want that, because when you get stronger IP, you can blend colors on the fly, okay? Okay, so this is probably a good angle, and I'm going to just show you how you can change the color of terrain. Like you'll notice here, like all of this is airbrushed. Everything you see is airbrushed. Yeah, there's woodland scenics, soils, turfs, static grass, etc. But everything has pretty much been airbrushed at the end, I mean. Like initially, you can do a lot of this with the traditional brush as well, but the beauty about the airbrush is that you can blend the edges, especially with acrylics, nicely. You know, that's the one advantage to oil paints. Like if you use oil paints to paint terrain, it's also an excellent method because the pigment is so rich and you can blend naturally with a brush. But the advantage to acrylics is the fast dry time, as I mentioned before, so you can just keep rolling with your momentum and process. You don't have to wait. If you try that with oils, you just turn it to mud, right? So you're restricted to just a wash initially, and then a dry brush, whereas acrylics fills everything in between. You can go to your heart's content and lay on layer after layer after layer of transparent color with an airbrush and thin paint. Now this color here I just call straw grass, is basically XF57 buff and XF88 dark yellow 2. Now that's just one method, but I would advise you to learn to mix your colors, like practice. That's how you learn. You can read all the books and have a ratio set in front of you, but it's not going to mean anything to you because now it's just somebody else's color and you're going to take a chance and shoot it. You need to play with paint and try stuff. Spill paint, mix paint, thin paint, shoot paint, brush paint, and you just get better at it. Like it's just, like it's inevitable, right? So one of the nice things here is like, I'm going to show you an example here. So this was just Woodland Scenics light green grass that I used the static grass applicator to lay in, but I just wanted to get a bit of a turf action here, just to suggest that there's been Roundup. Like the Roundup has been applied obviously more here on the main line, and then this is yards and like which goes further down, and track that's not used that much. This one would have Roundup too, but there'd be a little bit more grass, but I don't want it to be red-brown like this, but I wanted to get some red-brown in there because it'll show through when I highlight with this straw grass. And I'll show you how you can change the color of this just by lightly, tiny amount of paint, just gently, lightly applying it. So you can see how it's toning that down, okay? And a little bit of overspray is fine. That's why I mix the paint thin, because the overspray won't be aggressive, but it'll catch all those fibers though, like the pigment. So now you can see how that's changing, right, from here to there. And if you want that even more dead or faded, then you can use more yellow, like just straight dark yellow. Or you can also use yellow-green as well. It's not going to look like that when you put it on when it's thin. It's going to build up. It's going to be a hue of the color, right? Or a much lighter tone. Sorry if I go off camera a bit. I just want to get this part down here, but you can see now I'm rendering this right away like it's been maintained, right? With Roundup, because that's the way railroads do it. And notice the overspray here. So now it's created a little bit of dried clay type almost, because there'd be some flooding around here. And you can see how it's here, and then it's the season and it dries out. See, so that's what you can do. Then here there's more water retention in this area. So we want to change and vary that up. But I know I mentioned this before, and I'll just mention it again, like in case it got edited out. When I say postage stamp scene, like focus in on a small area and learn the art in a small footprint, right? And then you can multiply postage stamp scene philosophy like bricks or Lego or whatever throughout your layout. Focus in, put a lot of pride and time into one scene that you want to look realistic. And all that skill will just slowly expand outward and seep into all the other areas of your layout. That's the point of this. No, you're not going to do it like this, the whole layout right away, but you can work at it and it'll start to be a generalized application that'll really help your layout change and pop dramatically, okay?